All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can see that.
Yes.
So, welcome back, everybody. I cannot believe how fast these weeks have gone by. A couple of you were just saying, like, oh my gosh, we're almost done. Which, yeah, it has flown by. So tonight we're going to be talking about interviewing and negotiating offers. Next week, we're going to have one or two employer partners joining. And then our final week is just going to be a wrap up, but we're also going to bring in some other resources that might be of interest and of support to the group. So we'll probably talk about the final session next week. But for today, I want to invite AJ to talk about our housekeeping topics that we
Definitely.
always touch
Okay.
on.
So, welcome back, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well. And I saw that today was a sunny weather around Twin Cities, and I hope everyone enjoyed that. Most of you know, so first of all, we have interview and negotiating offers today with Pang Chul Som, and at the end of this session, we're going to have a panel of immigrant leaders. So have your questions ready for that. So before we continue with this session, so I'm going to start with some housekeeping stuff. So most of you know, and I want to say it for people who just entered, that we are recording this session. It would be great to be on camera and use your wonderful faces to build community. I'm grateful to those of you who completed the assessments for the previous session and the sessions before that. And I can also see that people are starting to get their assessments done, and that is wonderful. And next week, I expect you guys to have all assessments completed, as I send everyone the link to the assessment that they missed, and also the confidence assessment. So be ready and complete all the assessments from the previous session. Next slide, Lisa. Great. We have a Zoom poll. What is your biggest concern about interviewing for a job? Well, people have different type of concern. For some people, it is how to get the interview. For some people, it is how to prepare. What clothing should I wear? What questions should I ask about a job or company? What do I do if I get an offer? Or some others. So we would love to hear from you. So I'm going to launch the poll. And your biggest concern about interviewing might be like in this list. So if it's also included in this list, please say it so Lisa and Pangcha would know, and yeah, they could help you with that.
We could get a few more answers, that would be really great and helpful to our facilitator, our guest facilitator tonight. All right, AG, I think most of our participants have answered, so we can probably have you. Do you want me to click on poll?
Well, no, I can read it.
Okay.
Okay, so we have several answers. The names are anonymous if you did not say it. So yeah, so Charity said her name. So Charity said questions to ask during session or about job or organization to get a feel for the organization. The other one is, what are the questions panelists will ask? Technical, general, what is the interview common procedure in the United States? The other one is, present yourself without forgetting anything in a short form. And the other is initial preparation for the interview. Next one is, I have mentioned this before, but mainly in my situation, is negotiating a sponsorship, as I've found this to be a deal breaker for several jobs. I've applied to in the last 2 years. And the final one is how to prepare for the interview. So these were the answers for the poll.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your answers. And I'm happy to tell you that many of these we're going to cover tonight. Panksha's going to cover. And then when we get to the Q&A with the panelists, there are some pre-planned questions, but really it's whatever you all want to be asking. So if anything doesn't get answered as we go through the planned content, please jot down your questions and Paincha can answer them as we go, or you can also save them or ask them again for our panel. So thank you for participating in that. I am delighted tonight to introduce Pangsha Som. She is the HR manager for Quality Ingredients Corporation. Quality Ingredients Corporation is an employer partner for Prosperity Ready. We met them, oh my goodness, Pangsha, I'm gonna forget how we met. Oh, how can I not remember? We met just through the course of networking and connecting with different organizations that are really devoted to having a diverse workforce and coming up with really creative ways to help diverse workforces get the benefits that they need for them to be successful where they are in their current phase of starting their journeys here in the United States. So Pangsha is the HR manager at Quality Ingredients, as I mentioned, and she has over 8 years of leadership in food manufacturing. She has a master's in business administration from Augsburg. I'm sorry, you guys, I can't talk tonight. And social work from St. Olaf College. Those are both really well-known educational institutions here in Minnesota. And during her leisure time, she enjoys spending time with her two darling daughters and cooking and painting. So with no further ado, I am going to turn it over. Pangsha, if there's anything you want to add to your introduction, that would be great. And then you can jump right into the content.
Yes, well, thank you, Lisa, for having me tonight and for also allowing me to facilitate the sessions with your participants. I think you did a great job with the introduction. I have nothing else to add. Besides, it's just really boiled down to I did not start in HR. I have a social work background. Eventually, got through networking and a great opportunity back in 2014. That was what really driven the my HR career. So just wanted to point that out as well. So I guess we can dive into this session. And before that, I just wanted to let you all know that I apologize in advance if if you hear my daughter being loud or like my little Morky. And so I just apologize in advance in case if you do hear my Morky bark on the background. And so for for tonight's session is the primary topic is interviewing and negotiating offers. And so the learning objective for tonight as well is just to pretty much dive into reviewing interview like strategies and preparation for initial screening interview, formal interview, and then also really understanding what recruiters and hiring managers are looking for, what are their expectations. And then also to wrap up, the session will focus on the uh, different type of factors to consider when you're given an offer. Like how do you go about like, negotiating? There are a lot of factors, not just, salary or compensation. And so those are the type of factors that I will cover towards the end of this session for everyone. You can go to the next slide. And so to help with the flow of tonight's session, we will break it down to 4 parts. The first part will focus on the interview preparation. How do you prepare for the interview, whether that be phone screening or the formal interview itself? The second part will be what recruiters look for, like what are their expectations? How do you prepare yourself? And then the third part is the interviewing process itself. And when it comes to interviewing, we're talking about the formal in-person. It could be an in-person or Zoom formal interview. And then the last part is the negotiating offer. So once after you're done with the interview and the employer extend an offer, how do you go about reviewing the offer? How do you go about negotiating? And so that will wrap up the session for the night. So looking at the screening interview section, when you apply for a professional job in the United States, there are different approach to how the employer will go about the initial screening. And so oftentimes they have what you call a recruiter. That recruiter really focus on sourcing, identify like potential candidates for the job. And so it may be a matter of like, you may get a call from a recruiter, wanting to talk about your experience. Once you talk to a recruiter, if you pass that stage, then, you will talk to the hiring manager. Or sometime, you might not even talk to a recruiter. It might jump into a hiring manager, or it could jump into like, talking to the manager who is, supervising that particular role. And so it just really depends on the overall culture dynamic of the organization that would dictate if there's going to be a recruiter, a hiring manager, or if the manager who is supervising that position is going to be the hiring manager itself. And then not only that, but the first step into screening interview usually will involve like a phone screening. Phone screening interview typically will either be conducted over the phone or now often like over Zoom. And so what you want to do is you want to find a quiet place in your home with good lighting. And also if you're doing like any Zoom interview, otherwise then you want to find a quiet space or room in your house and make sure that, you inform your family member that you are going to be, participating in a phone screening. So that way they don't come knocking on the door or they don't come to bother you. So I would recommend that, you find a quiet place in your home for the phone interview. And the purpose of the phone interview is pretty much, is the initial screening. They look at your resume. They want to know like what kind of work history you have. What kind of skill could you bring to the organization? And that will really dictate if they want to move you to the next step to bring you into the organization, meet with the hiring manager or, the other participant who will be part of the interview panel. And I will highly recommend that when you are going through that phone screening, it's still good to have your resume in front of you while you're on the phone. The reason why is because you want to refer to any relevant experience that could, enhance your chance of being invited to come in for a in-person interview. And when when the recruiter asks you a question, make sure that you respond with simple and concise, responses. In America, it's different because I know that in a lot of culture, especially in mine, from the Hmong community, we love incorporating storytelling. So we go in detail, elaborate. But when it comes to the American culture, it's a culture of like urgency. They want you to precise, want you to be simple with your response. So you don't want to focus a lot of time on one question. They want to really dive into like getting to know who you are as an overall individual. So make sure that when you do answer, keep it simple and concise. And then at the end of the phone screening, it's always, common courtesy to thank the interviewer for their time. And it is okay to also ask them, what is the next step? Even though it might be a phone screening, it showed that you're still interested. You want to know when is the next step, like whether it be coming in for an interview or just to let them know that you still have that interest in the job. Moving on to the next one. And I'm sure that like as part of your pre-homework or your homework for this session, AJ sent out this YouTube clip. You know, the What Recruiter Don't Tell by Marat. And so hopefully many of you or the rest of you have already watched this 5-minute clip because I'll ask some questions for discussion. And so I'm just curious to know, anyone can reply. What information do you find most valuable in the video? Any one of you want to share?
Yeah, I don't think I saw that link. You share it. I'd like to look at it probably after the call today.
Okay. The other gets a chance to review the video prior to tonight's session, or
AJ, was the link in the pre-work or the post-work email? I know you guys get a lot of email from us.
I think it was in the pre-work email.
Yeah, I only see the Fast Company article, but no YouTube links of any videos here, or at least not on the email from the reminder for the meeting today. Oh, never mind. I found it. Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay. Yeah, I was also checking because I was also not sure about my memory.
Yep, no, it was on the March 9th email. So that's on me.
It's a really, you guys, it's a good video. Paige, I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at it. I think you probably did. We do have a summary of the video on the next page. So I guess I can forward to the summary. And then if you want to give kind of your impressions as an HR manager who is involved in a ton of recruiting, that might be helpful for the group.
yeah, for sure. So I would recommend that during your leisure time or even after the session to just spend like 5 minutes to watch the video. It's just really like Mara really touches on 5 key points. And the first one is making a positive first impression. And that matters, whether it be like phone interview or in person. The first impression matter. And I always like joke a lot with either like new hires or like even my friends and family who ask about like interview like tips. I also always tell them that like from my own personal experience, when I interview, the first 10 seconds really matter because it really tell the employer if you're a good fit or not. And so I say that, whether it be like through Zoom on the phone or in person, always remind yourself to just be friendly and put on a smile, because you just never know. And then also like the second point is keep your Merit talk about like keeping your social media positive and political. So what that means is that, you know, oftentimes when we are looking for a job searching, you don't think about like, okay, are they gonna look up my Facebook account? Are they gonna like look at my LinkedIn? Are they gonna look up or Google my name? And it's quite crazy, but recruiters will do that. They will go to the extent. They want to make sure that they are bringing someone who is a good fit, not only like as an individual, but also someone who is positive, who can like, you know, separate their life and political view from like work. And so I always recommend that, you know, if you are curious and you want to know, hey, what is out there about me, Google yourself. And make sure that when it comes to your Facebook, you know, Facebook is a social media outlet where we share a lot of personal information. We share our thoughts. I will recommend that, you know, private your Facebook, your Instagram. So that way it's only inclusive to your, you know, group of friends and your family. And then also like the third takeaway is dress for the position that you're applied for. You know, oftentimes I guess the takeaway is to, you know, it's never bad to dress one level more than what the dress code will be. And so even if you know that you're applying for a work environment where, let's say your recruiter or the hiring manager say, hey, you know, you can come in casual, business casual, always go like one level more, you know, be more formal. And it's okay to like be formal in your dressing because you do want to, you know, be presentable, have a fresh professional look. And then the fourth point is you can negotiate. Oftentimes when recruiter reach out to you, they do have a salary range that they work with. And it is okay to negotiate for a higher salary. This point is really boiled down to knowing your worth. Doing your homework ahead of time. Meaning that, you know, if you are going to apply for example, if you're going to apply for an HR management position, what will you do? You will want to go online. Glassdoor is a good source where you can look up for a salary range. Or you can go to like, you know, the state of Minnesota website and look at like the cost of living, look at like what kind of range are they paying for someone in HR management in this county or in this location. So never ever underestimate your worth when it comes to negotiating. And then the last one is a key one where I always tell a lot of like, you know, colleagues or friends, make sure that you have positive and prepared reference. You want to make sure that you have a list of like at least average 3 to 4 individual in your life that can vouch for you, that can share positive, you know, things about you. And it could be like a former coworker. It could be a former boss. I will also want to add in my own point on this one is that, you know, when you do listen as a reference, make sure that you reach out to them and let them know that you're actively looking for a job, that this is what you're looking for, and share with them like, you know, these are my skill set, these are my strengths. And share your resume with them so they are up to date with your work history so they can speak to the strength and skill that you have. Next slide. And then we'll look at the 8 factors that affect selection. And I'm sure that, you know, you already received the Prosperity Ready Degree Immigrant Job Seeker Program guide for this. And so we'll go, I'll go through like each factor and really kind of give like a quick overview, like the importance of it. And so if you do have this guide with you, I would recommend that you pull it out and just, you know, have it ready in case you do have questions. So the first factor, preparation. Preparation it's really boiled down to like, what do you know about the company, the industry, or the job that you're applying for? And this preparation means, doing homework in advance, looking up, researching about the company, researching about the job. Nowadays, as we all know, technology is pretty advanced. You can Google a company and it will pull up like all the information that you want to know. And so for preparation, you want to make sure that you do your homework in advance. So knowing the organization, because oftentimes when you go in for an interview, they will ask you, what do you know about, Quality Ingredients Corporation? You want to make sure that you show them that, hey, you know what, you did your homework. You know what the company is about. They're not going to care if you know like the gritty gritty detail of like the organization, but they want to know that you know what they're doing, like the overall, their mission, the vision. And so I will recommend that if you are going to search up a potential employer, you want to know like first, what did they do for business? What is their mission, vision, how does your position that you apply for tie in with the overall like organization? So those are just like takeaways that you want to look for when you research the company. The second one is your ability to demonstrate through developing and communicating example stories that align with the requirement and expectation of the job that you apply for. This one will involve more of like, you sharing reference to like your own experience and how you can tie that to their requirement. And so off the time, they will probably ask you like, more like scenario-based questions. And you want to make sure that, you are clear with, focusing on the situation. How do you go about like, coming with a resolution? And so you want to make sure that you think back to your work experience and think about like type of scenario that you encounter. For example, if you're applying for a HR management job, they want to know, how do you go about handling like employee relation conflict? And you could share like a specific example of like, okay, this one time we have an employee who have a conflict with another one. This is how I went about like, handling that conflict. So you want to be simple and concise. And then moving to like motivation factor. Motivation factor, this really reveal your energy and drive and past achievement and questions that you ask. So make sure that you ask good questions at the end of the interview. Never ever leave an interview without asking questions. Asking questions show that you care, you're passionate, you want to know more about the organization. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about if you're a good fit for the organization. It's about like whether they're a good fit for you too. And so make sure that you ask good questions. The fourth one, match with job and organization. What do you know about the people, the culture, the environment? Factor for success that you can incorporate into your example, they're listening for any relevance experience. They want to know you're a good fit. They want to understand like if you're going to come in and be able to, develop a good working relationship with your peers, with your boss, with other management. And then 5, integrity. Integrity is really boiled down to like, how do you ensure the employer that they can trust you? And and I say that this comes down to like the mutual respect, the trust that you earn. And it's one of those where you just can't earn, you over time you work. It's through your work, through your performance, through your, attitude that you demonstrate that, hey, you have integrity in your work and also with the relationship with your peers. And then 6, connections. This is really boiled down to like identifying like, sponsor connection who can speak on your behalf. So for example, you apply for a job at a company. If you know someone in there who can vouch for you, it's always good to let them know that, hey, I do know someone here, who can speak, who can vouch for me. And it could be like a referral. Um, it will give you, definitely give you a competitive advantage, especially if you do know someone in that organization who can speak and vouch for you. And then attitude. Your nonverbal communication as well as the way you speak make an impact. The moment you walk in, the firm handshake that you give, that will tell the interviewer if who you are as an individual. You know, one thing that my own personal experience for me, like, I'm a thinker before I talk. And so sometimes, it takes time for me to like articulate my thoughts. And it's okay. It's okay to like, be self-aware of your areas of improvement. And so for me, like when I go in for an interview, what I like to do is I like to prepare with questions that the employer could potentially ask. I bring a notebook with me, jot down notes, write down the questions, and refer to it because oftentimes like for me, I cannot just like go and be expected to like just articulate my thoughts. And so those are just like an example of like, okay, you need to understand, just be able to identify your strength, be able to identify areas that you can improve. And then the last one, competitiveness. How do you compare other in consideration for the same opportunity? This is where you really need to understand your niche or understand your brand. And I like to say that oftentimes when we talk about branding, we talk about like we're talking about marketing, but it's really boiled down to like marketing yourself, knowing your brand. How do you go about selling yourself? It's not about like selling like shortcut, or it's not about like short sell. It's about like knowing yourself, who you are, being authentic to yourself when you go in for an interview. And what is it about you that make you stand out from the 4 or 7 other applicants? Then moving on to the formal professional interview process itself. When you go in for an interview, you want to start thinking, or prior to that, start thinking about questions that you will be asked by the interviewer, and then questions that you should ask. And then you wrap up the interview by making a strong close and follow up. Next slide. So often when you go in, questions that you will be asked will be, tell me about yourself. And I like to call this the elevator speech. Even if you're not applying for a job and you're, if you're meeting someone for the first time, you want to be prepared. You want to have an elevator speech. And so when you're talking about yourself, if you don't know where to start with the professional summary on your resume that really capture or provide an overview of who you are as an individual. And then as you speak about yourself, you can add on, additional detail. You want to make sure that like, when you talk about yourself, you're not dragging on. You want to be simple, concise, keep it to 2 minutes. Really give an overview of who you are as an individual. And then moving on, they'll ask a couple of like behavioral questions. And I say that when it comes to the behavioral questions, it really a measurement of, are you a good fit, for the organization? Or like, are you a good fit with, the working with the hiring manager, who could be your manager? It's just like seeing if personality, behavioral wise, if you're a good fit. And so some behavioral questions could be about like, what is the toughest feedback you have received? Tell me about a challenge you faced in your last job and how do you address them? So those are the type of behavioral questions that really want to get to know you as an individual, aside from like the skills and all of that. Like, how do you go about handling stress? If you have a conflict at work, how do you go about, resolving the conflict? And then moving on to the third point, they will ask you, I guarantee you, every time when you apply, they will ask you, why do you want to work here? Why do you want this job? And so here is really capture, your interests. And I say that, don't try to be cliche. You want to really like let them know, provide a meaningful, authentic answer to why you are interested and want to, work there. And this is where you can, come in and share how your relevant experience tied with it. It could be where, let's say, I have X number of years experience and, doing similar work, as this position, or like, because I share the same value and my value align with the mission, vision of the organization, And so you have to be authentic to yourself when you answer that question. And then the last one is what questions do you have for us? Off the time, this will be, a question that asked by many employers. They want to know that you are interested. You're still interested in that job. I know that, like, and there's a cultural differences when it comes to the American culture and your own culture. And, as a reference to my own culture, oftentimes we don't ask questions. Once we're done, we just leave because, asking questions can be a sign of like being rebellious or being, and where I'm always told to never ask questions. If they say so, just be it. But in the US, it's different. When you ask questions, it shows that you're interested in the job, and those who interviewing you. So always have at least 3 questions pre-planned before you go in for an interview. If you're not sure if those questions are good, any question is better than none. And so I said that, always go prepared, and that will, like, show them that you are still interested in the job. And then going to the next slide, questions that you should ask. First, again, research the job, the company, the industry. Ask question along these line of how is the company dealing with blank trend? What are the key challenges in this role? What other department positions does this position need to work with to be successful? And what is the company doing to ensure employee safety during the pandemic? So those are all, like, example of questions that you could ask. And it's always like okay to bring a notebook or a notepad and jot down notes. So that way, if you do have questions about like a certain topics or like something that the interviewer mentioned a while back, you could always reference to it. And for me, like, an example could be like, for me, since I have 2 daughters and they're both under the age of 3, for me, it's important that, an employer have a good work-life balance. And so, like, for me, it's just not about the company itself that I ask questions about. I also ask questions about how's the work-life balance here at QIC? Because, I matter too. If I'm going to apply for this job, I want to make sure that not only if it's a good fit for me, that I'm a good fit for that job, they also has to be a good fit for me. And so I say that it doesn't necessarily have to be questions about the company or the job itself. It could be questions about work-life balance. It could be questions about what are your thoughts? What are your own experience working here at QIC? So that way you get like a personal like feel of like, is this really a good fit for me if they do extend that offer? Okay. Next slide. And the last part of the interview process is like make a strong close and follow up. What this means is that, once you're done with the interview, you want to close up with a recap of your key strength. State your passion for the company or the type of work that you're applying for. And you want to also thank the interviewer for their time. And lastly, what you will want to do is that I know that like with today's technology, you could, instead of writing a letter, you can write a short email, thank you, within 24 hours. And oftentimes it will be really generic, but what I like to do is, and a little tip from my own experience is that I like to reference to something that I learned in that interview when I email my thank you. I don't want it just to be generic saying thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to come in for an interview. It's more of like, okay, you know what? Sarah mentioned this in the interview, and I want to point out that, this really align and resonate with me. And this is how I'm going to go about bring added value to the company. So you want to stand out. You want the interviewers to know that, hey, you know what? You walk away with knowledge and with takeaway points about the organization. And so I recommend that you send that and thank you email within 24 hours. And then, at the end of the day, once you are done with the interview, always allow time to do some self-reflection and really think about like your responses to the questions asked. And for me, like I like to carry a personal notebook and really look back to the type of questions they ask, because that also help prepare you for the next interview, whether it be with like the second round of interview in the same organization, or it could be for the same position at a different company, because you then know that, okay, these are the type of questions they'll ask if I were to go in for an interview. Okay. Moving on to the next one. And then this is the fun one, where once they're done with the interview, now they extend an offer. What do you do? I say that right now, it is an employee market. Unemployment rate is all-time low. So what that means is that, now the employer does not get the opportunities to kind of like select their set their expectation of what they look for. Now it's really the job seeker market. There's a lot of opportunities. It's a matter of like, knowing your worth, looking at like offer given to you. So I say that, take the time to consider if you have a potential employer who extend an offer. Don't rush to take that offer right away. Allow at least like a day to like, review the offer and really ask yourself, is the offer great? Is the offer good, but still need more, or they could do better? Is the offer not worth negotiating? And so, really like, assess your own personal circumstance as well in terms of like your worth. I say that if you do have like two offers at the same time, you can compare apples to apple, If it's just one offer given, it is okay to think about it, to like, explore and see what is out there, what kind of like offer is given to that type of like, position. And also to remember to identify your top concern. For me, like as I mentioned earlier, one of my biggest concerns, I want to make sure that they have a good work-life balance. And a good work-life balance means they need to have a good PTO policy. So if I do need time off, like to take my daughter to the doctor, like do I have enough PTO? Are they accommodating when it comes to like if I need time off for like my daughter's school activities down the road? Like what is their, policy regarding that? So those are like that's right now, that's one of my top concerns. So if I were to be job searching, I would definitely consider that. And you can, and the good thing about negotiating or getting an offer is that like this is the stage where it allow you to raise any concerns in this process. And so one biggest mistake that I have seen a lot of job seeker that they do is that they don't raise any concern at this stage until after they're already hired, if they accepted the offer. And then at that time, maybe, it's more difficult to like negotiate the offer. And so I say that, if you really do have like top concern, address it right then at this stage when you're given the offer. So you still have time to negotiate. And not only that, but when it comes to salary, I always tell, others that don't settle for the proposed offer if you know that you deserve more. Willing to let them know if pay is an issue, let them know. Oftentimes with recruiter hiring manager, they have a range. They're not going to tell you this is the top range, this is the max. They want to hear from you. They want to know why you deserve more. And so never settle for a salary that you're not comfortable with. And then moving on to the next slide. So these are these are a couple like factors to consider for negotiating. And so I say the total compensation. When I say total compensation, I'm not talking about just strictly the pay, the salary. Compensation include salary, bonus, stock, and include like benefits, medical, dental, vision, PTO. You want to make sure that you look at the overall compensation. And what they oftentimes in the interview process, the interviewer will ask you, what are you looking for? If they don't ask you at the phone screening, they'll most likely ask you at the end of the interview. And I always recommend to job seeker, do not give out an exact amount. Always give a range. So that because you don't want to lowball yourself. And there may be time where if you are in desperate need of a job, you might just take a job regardless, without even considering the pay. But I say that in any situation, even if you're like desperately need a job, never ever lowball yourself or see yourself worth less than what you are worth. And so I say always give a range when it comes to the salary. If you do not know, I will recommend do your homework in advance, look up salary range for the position that you are interested in. And you want to also look at you might want to consider timing of first increase because when you work for a job, you want to get compensated well, at performance review. You want to know when is your next increase. You also want to know if there's any sign-on bonus. You may want to also look at their vacation pay time off policy. Like, what are they willing to offer you? Another factor could be like a start date. What if you have, a situation that come up and you know that, hey, you need additional 3 weeks before you can start? Are they flexible with that? And then what about an opportunity to work from home? What if the position that you apply for allow from work from home? How does that look like? Is that a factor to consider? And other benefits that you will want to other factors that you want to consider when looking at or reviewing offers, their benefits, including 401k match. And so these are all factors that you will want to take into consideration when you're looking or reviewing a job offer. If you are someone where you're you know what, I need another person to look at this offer, you can always ask, those you trusted to review the offer. For me, a key person in my life that I always share my offer with is my husband, because I want to make sure that, hey, what are your thoughts? it's just like, if the offer given from this potential employer reflects the value, my worth. And like when you are the job seeker, you're desperate to just take whatever offer. But it's always good to have another person opinion. For me, like, I trust my husband that, hey, he's able gonna look for certain things. And he know that, I working in HR management is just stressful job. And so he always say, hey, you want to make sure there's a good work-life balance. And so he always remind me of like the other factors that I have to consider, when it comes to reviewing offers. Okay, go to the next slide.
So our next slide is a break, and we're a little bit ahead of time, and Painter, you have covered so much ground and so thoroughly. So what I thought we could do is maybe pause here and see if any of you have questions for Paincha. Our panel is going to be joining us around 7:10. So we could probably spend a few minutes on Q&A for our guest speaker and then take a 10-minute break. We said 5, but I think we can do a 10-minute break, and that will allow people a good break and time for you to maybe go through your binders or any notes you might have, in case you've got additional questions for the panelists. So I've been trying to keep up. Oh, yes, and I will make another public service announcement. I put it in the chat, but in terms of resumes, which every session, I don't think we've had one session where we haven't talked about the importance of a stellar resume. Paincha talked about it tonight. Your 90-second elevator speech or your introduction. That's a version of your professional summary on your resume. So in order for us to make introductions to employers and to make networking introductions, we have to have a resume that follows the template that we've provided you all, and that also demonstrates that you have spent some time working with your resume coach. So that's my public service announcement about resumes, because you guys were 3 weeks out from wrapping up this program. And what we always do at the end is we will meet with each of you individually, just like we did in the beginning, and we'll talk about introductions that we can make. Any of our employer partners will automatically get your resumes. But if there's other employers that we have connections with that makes sense to connect you with, we will do that, as long as your resume is in really good shape. So please get, if you haven't started working on it, I know some of you you all have a lot going on. So consider the next 2 weeks your catch-up time if you haven't had the opportunity to really focus on that resume. So what questions do you have? Hi, Raina. I'm glad you could join us. What questions do you have for our expert? I think you can all tell this is somebody who really knows a lot about recruiting and interviewing and negotiating. Eden, what's your question?
All right, thank you. Sorry, my background might be a little bit noisy. I'm at work, working with students. I apologize for that. To the presenter, I would like to say thank you so much. You've been so elaborate and detailed and clearly explaining things. I would like to find out, my question is gonna be under negotiation. When it comes to how you take the offer, I like the idea of bringing in other factors to consider, the 401k, benefit, medical. It's not necessarily the money, opportunity for growth. Do they have that? But I've always had challenges with putting a range, because from my experience, I come from South Sudan, from Africa, just for you to understand where I'm coming from, my point of view. sometimes you have a couple of people, definitely you're not alone. There are a couple of candidates that have been interviewed. And if you might be the successful, maybe the one on top, the top list, but you end up being dropped because your expectation is so high. And when you're putting a range, putting out how much you wish to take home, probably gross on net pay. How do you do that? Because my challenge has always been that you end up being dropped because you are a little bit above the expectation, and someone who is equally close to you negotiated within their range. So how do you avoid such I don't want to say miscalculations as such, but how do you ensure that you are not being dropped, miss out the offer because you have put your expectations so high? That has always been the biggest challenge with me. And I end up compromising because I don't know whether the next person could also be a very close competitor, might take over or take the job simply because my expectation has been so high. Yeah. Thank you.
That is a really good question. I will recommend that, when you do apply for a job, look at their proposed range and really evaluate where you set, your experience. Take into consider your experience. If it's more of like an entry level job where you know that, hey, I don't have the experience, but I can leverage from that down the road, then maybe you want to put a range where it's on the lower end. Or if you say that, if they said that, this is the range and you have X number of years of experience that you want to be in that middle ground in between that range. For me, like my personal experience, I never aim for the top. I always want to find that middle ground because I know that, okay, if they come back lower than this is where I'm settled. This is where it works for me. And I also look at like, my work history, my salary paid throughout my career, and really see like, where is that middle ground? So if I know that, hey, this is a job where I may not have met all the requirements, but I can see as a leverage for opportunity down the road, I may be willing to, meet in the middle and not aim for that high range. And this is one where it's a little tricky to provide a definite like answer. This is what you should do, but really like take into consideration your work experience, your salary throughout your career, and see where that fit in line with like the range that they propose. And I'm sure that Lisa can add more as she has more experience than me, but that would be my advice.
Well, we've got Baketa with his hands raised, and then we are gonna need to go to break, but one thing I think we should circle back to after the break and maybe ask the panelist or ask Paincha is not everybody publishes any ranges or even like the middle or the median of a salary. So that's a whole nother kind of question, but Baketa, I want to make sure we get to your question.
Hi. Yeah, it was very good presentation, and it's not a question, it's just to present my experience regarding asking a question, at the end of the interview. I got interviewed like a couple of months ago by one of the city HR. Unfortunately, I wasn't selected for that position. Then I tried to connect with the hiring, like the department director of that position to see if like to know what would be my shortcoming that I wasn't get selected for that position. So he told me that answering a question is easy, and that is something that they wouldn't see as something that stands out. But however, when we ask a question, um, like one of like the candidate that was selected asked them a question that challenged them. For example, he researched about this, like the city, and then he pinpointed out the problem, and then, hey, I heard or I read this kind of a problem in your city, and such and such was going on. How did you handle that kind of problem? That was like, he told me that impacted a lot than even the whole interview. So yeah, just to share this experience with you guys.
Yeah, Pangsha, do you have any comments on that? I mean, that's a very sophisticated interview technique. It's risky, but it's sophisticated, and I guess to a lot of what Pangsha has shared is it shows that he had to dig really deep and do his homework to figure that out. Now, I don't know what would have made it even better is if he would have then said, and here's how my skill set and my background could help you resolve that problem. It's super sophisticated. Pangsha, I'd love for you to weigh in on this. I encourage you guys to try it. It forces you to do your research. It forces you to connect the organization's challenges to what you can bring to the table. And yeah, it could be it could be the tiebreaker, right? So Baketa, you were right up there, and there was something that man did to give him that little edge, which was that sophisticated technique. I'm glad you shared that with us. Thank you. Pangsha, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say that's a really bold move from the applicant to the candidate to go willingly and say, hey, this is the flaw, this is the issue that I see and within the organization. I say that it really just depends on like what position you're applying for, and really boil down to like the interviewer interviewing you. Maybe they're looking for someone who's a critical thinker, who's an analyst, who's able to think on the spot, be able to identify issues right away. And I say that, I think for myself, I would not be bold enough to say, hey, these are the issue I identify within the organization. But I say that, whatever you point out, whether it be like room for improvement in the organization, or if you are curious about something going on, just again, it boils back to like tying with your experience. How can you go about like resolving that issue? How can you bring asset or like value to the table? And so I say that definitely if you're able to do that, great. But if you're someone who's like, you know what, you're not going to be that risk taker, I will be honest, avoid that, because you don't want that to be a like a pushback, because it really depends on what type of job you're applying for, and also like who are the interviewers, what they're looking for.
Yeah, and if it was the city, it was likely public information, so that's also a big difference. Like if there's an article about it, the news, news channels are talking about it, that's a little different than something that's not been publicly disclosed. So Eden, let's take your question and then we're gonna move to break. And then AJ, I think let's take a 10-minute break, but AJ, if you can hang out to welcome our panelists as they come in, that would be great. So Eden, you always ask great questions. You all ask great questions. What's your question?
Is it me or someone?
Is your hand just still up?
I raised actually when one of our colleagues said about how someone asked a question and overtook over the interview. So I just had it, but the presenter mentioned that my comment was gonna be like, it depends on who is who. Some hiring managers are not open-minded, and that might be a huge risk Some do not want people who are critical because they feel like you're going to oppose them, you're going to criticize their work. So that might actually put you in a very tricky position. But yeah, if you find someone who's open-minded, who's looking for a problem solver person, they'll be super excited to have you because looks like you have identified the weaknesses and you'll be a solution to that. If I am in that candidate's position, I'd rather say, what are the challenges that you're facing, within the organization, putting it indirectly and let me hear from them. And if they can mention it, good. If they can't mention it, but if I get hired, I already read it and I already know at the back of my mind, and that can come in later. That's the point that I just wanted to add.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's actually a really, really good interview question. What are your most pressing challenges? And then you can respond with, here's where I think I could add value. So I think those are all really good points. So Paincha, any last comments on that before we go to a 10-minute break?
That is a valid point. It's always good to like throw the question back to them, gets to know like what kind of challenges they're encountering, because with any job that you apply for, you go in, it will always come with a set of challenges, but you want to be prepared for it. If you do get that offer, you know that this is what you're walking into. So that is a valid question to ask.
All right, well, we're gonna take well, we used up some good time here on Q&A. AJ, should we do a 5 or a 10-minute break?
I think if we could do a 5-minute break, because we say the panelists would join at 7:10, and we would admit them from the waiting room, so they would not be waiting a lot.
All right, so 5 minutes. See you soon.
Hello, Emily, can you hear us? Hello, Emily, can you hear me?
Hello, yes, I can hear you.
Oh, that's wonderful. How are you doing, Emily?
Good, good.
Well, that's great. So,
Turn on my
yeah,
camera.
everyone is on a break for like 15 seconds or left. They'll
Okay,
come back. Yeah,
okay, good. Yeah, thanks for having me.
you're welcome.
Can you see, um, can you see me or no? Did I turn on my
Yes.
camera?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, we can see you.
okay, thanks.
Hi, Emily. How are you?
Hey, Lisa, how are you? It's been a while.
I know it's been too long. Are you still doing your podcast?
Well, it's slowing down a little bit. I just moved to Florida, so I'm still trying to get back on track with
All
all
right.
the
Are
normal routines. Yeah.
you still at Best Buy?
I actually left Best Buy. I'm with Alaska Airlines right now, still doing product management.
All
So,
right. Well, we're gonna have to adjust your introduction then.
okay.
Mhm.
Yes, it's been a while. A lot have changed.
Do we have Semi? I know Joe Tay was running late. Do we have Semi yet? AJ?
We don't have it yet.
All right. I am going to. When did Joe Tay think he was gonna be able to join us?
Well, he said he would be able to join us a little bit later because he was stuck in a traffic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we may end up with Emily and Paincha as our panelists, which is perfectly fine because they both have tons and tons of experience. Well, I know we've got questions. This is a big group and we've had such good discussions for the last, oh my goodness, 8 weeks, I guess. So AJ, why don't we go ahead and introduce Emily? Everybody knows Paincha, and maybe we can just start the questions with Emily and Paincha. And Emily, I think we're gonna probably have you introduce yourself since you've made some big moves lately and we don't have an updated bio on you yet.
Yeah, sounds good. I hope you guys can see me. I just turned on my camera, confirming. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so my name is Emily Zhang. Thank you so much for having me. I recently just started a new product management job at Alaska Airlines and working on a number of e-commerce projects, like omni-channel and how to like boost the campaign and a lot of back-end support, I would say. So it's very exciting. Super, really wanted to share what I have learned in the past and some of the negotiation or interviewing skills that I have developed over the course of the practice. Love to share what I've learned with the group today. So thank you so much for having me again.
Thank
Well,
you.
that's wonderful. So, thank you, Emily. So now that we have Emily with us, I think it would be great if we could take a screenshot for our LinkedIn post. So I ask all of you to come on the camera if it's possible for you. If you cannot come on the camera, it's okay.
Yeah, ideally, if you can, that would be great. And I think, or have your picture, that works too. A picture works. But you know what they say, picture is worth 1,000 words, so. All right, it looks like we've got a pretty good,
Yes, I got several screenshots, so that's wonderful. So, well, I believe I have the delight of moderating this panel tonight. We don't have our two other panelists, but I think we're good with Emily and Reina. Not Reina, Emily and Pancha. I'm sorry, Reina. So we had our question.
next time.
Okay, so we have our questions directed to each panelist just to let us get started, and other panelists could answer or add some fairiness into that. But we have two panelists. So yeah, the first question is directed to Emily. Yeah, I'm going to open the questions. Okay, Emily. So the question is, where do we think the hiring process needs more improvement? What advice do you have for navigating barriers in the hiring process?
Good question. In terms of improvements, I will say sometimes when we go into interviews, like we're really excited, we have done our homework, and then, maybe you walked out of the interview, it's like, wow, I did really well. I think I just like nailed it. But then, sometimes like you don't hear back in terms of feedback, whether it's good or bad. So, I mean, when I interview candidates, like at my previous job or even nowadays, I will always like be able to try to share some feedback with the candidates, whether it's positive or, some of the areas that we could improve upon. So I know, it's not every company is different. Sometimes like you cannot like ask for feedback, but, I know, as a candidate, if I'm going in to interview for a job, I would really appreciate to, hearing, hey, how can I improve upon? How come I didn't get the job? Things like that. And then the second part of the question is, can you remind me one more time?
Yes, it was the one, what advice do you have for navigating barriers in the hiring process?
Yeah, I would say in the hiring process, so I've interviewed quite a few. I can even like cannot count it among my fingers, but I just feel like sometimes, it's definitely showing your knowledge is important, right? The skill sets, why you're qualified for the role. But also on the other hand, it's like the soft skill, right? I think, for me, like that area sometimes can be depends on who is the person interviewing you. Like it's hard to like connect with them, especially like doing the virtual connection. And I think, one of the barriers that we can overcome is to, be more just showing your personality a little bit more. Like don't be shy or like trying to like change who you really are, because like it's the virtual setting. Because I think, going in for a new job, like you just need to be your truly authentic self, in a way that is like professional, right? Like to kind of demonstrate your personalities a little bit. So I think in terms of barriers, like it could be hard, right? Because they have to be like likable, like am I saying the right thing? Like you're trying to like second guess yourself from time to time. But I think, we just need to be confident going in, like, hey, I've done my homework, I know why I'm qualified for this job, and then just relax and just like be yourself and kind of like be concise with your bullet points, like just be like, okay, this is the reason why I think I'm qualified for this role, like bullet point, boom, 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 like ABC. So I think that have helped me really well over the years. It's just like, show your work, but then like you have to tell the story, make it like compelling, make it interesting in a way that like people actually want to hear your stories. At least like that's how I see it. When I study for interviews, I just think that people sometimes overanalyze it and they think that like it's a one-way street, but it's actually not a one-way street. It goes like both ways. So I just want to empower everyone to just be more confident going into interviews and just know that, you know, you have a say in this decision making, and then you just feel empowered to like contribute to the conversation. So that's kind of my point of view.
Well, thank you, Emily. So, Pangcha or Lisa, do you want to add anything to this question, or should I go to the next question?
I would like to add, Emily made some great points, and I also agree with her that like oftentimes after an interview, some employers are not great at getting back to you with feedback or even letting you know if you make the cut. And so, as an HR like professional, I always make a mental note that, you know, if I don't like that, then I don't want any applicants to feel that way too, you know. So even if they're not going to make the cut, they don't have met the qualification. It's still a common courtesy to at least like let them know that, you know, you went a different direction. And Emily spoke to like, you know, empowerment, and for me, I want to take a different approach, and I want to say that, you know, from an employer standpoint, I wish, you know, I actually I'm actually like a big fan of panel interview. And the reason for that is because, you know, you're not just interviewing with one individual, you're interviewing with different you know, members of the organization. And so you really it gives you that opportunity to allow different perspective of who you are, you know, reflecting of who you are, and also like an assessment of like, you know, you as a candidate. And I say that like the reason why I say that is because, you know, when you only have like a one-on-one interview, you can't really that could be like a bias, you know, a view of you, like the interviewer may have like a biased view. And so to have like other member interview is great. So like, you know, currently at like Quality Ingredients Corporation, you know, we for any of our interview, we always have a management, you know, someone who's overseeing that role interview. We also have a individual from the workforce who interview. So it gives you different, like, you know, perspective, opinions on the individual. And I think that's more like inclusive and of getting to know the individual as a whole than just to have that one person's opinion about whether you want to hire that person or not. And so I say that, you know, a lot of employers should lean towards like, you know, having someone else in different department interview as well.
And the only thing I will add is, in my experience, which is a few decades long, how a company treats you when you're interviewing is likely how they're going to treat you when you are hired. So if they don't show up on time for the interview, that happens. But if they don't apologize and say, oh, we're so sorry, we are behind. If they cut the interview short, if they don't get back to you, or they get back to you in a way that doesn't feel respectful or timely, and then they're down the line, they're like, oh yeah, you're our candidate, we want to hire you. Just know that those are all flags about the culture. So remember, we had 2 sessions on corporate culture, and I think we mentioned this in one of those sessions, that the way you're treated during your candidacy is likely a sign of things to come in the organization. So that's why it's important to be really clear. Maybe that's okay with you for a little bit. Maybe you're willing to put up with some not a great culture or environment if you're looking for income stabilization, or you're looking to get some experience on that resume. But the way people behave in the interview process is typically how you're going to be treated.
Thank you, Lisa. So this next question is a very important question for me. I'm looking forward to your answers, Emily and Pangcha, or maybe Lisa or anyone else. So the question is, what are some best practices or tips for negotiating higher salaries? So yeah, Who wants to start with the answer?
I can go first.
Okay.
Yeah, negotiation is fun. It can be very scary. So Alaska probably is my number 7 or 8 job so far in my 10, 11 years career. And every single time when I receive a new offer, maybe not the first couple jobs. I don't think I negotiated like hard enough for the first couple ones because I felt like, okay, I just like really appreciate having the opportunities, especially like internships, like, oh my God, I'm just so grateful. But yeah, I think after the second job or the third one, I promised myself that I will always like go in and negotiate. And here's the reasons why. The first reason is that when I talk about like how, but like the first reason is I wanted to advocate for myself, right? Because like that's the best time for you as a candidate to make sure that you get what you are hoping for. Because like once you're in a company, it's harder to like negotiate for more. You might have to go through a very long process to be evaluated again. And the second thing is, based on your experience, right? Like you want to be able to like practice and showcase your ability. And I think, for me, it takes a lot of courage to be able to like get my words out, because like sometimes like it's just like, oh my God, like am I saying the right thing? But I think it's very important to know like where you at the market, and then you also like just put yourself out there and just present yourself in a way that like, hey, here's the value I'm bringing in the table, here's what I deserve based on my homework. And when it comes to negotiation, there's a couple of things that I usually do. I would do the market research, right, the homework, but also kind of talking to my friends, right? There's a lot of product managers in the field, working for various companies, and I think things have changed nowadays. Like people are more open to sharing their insights, not to compare, but more like just understanding like where things at in the industry. So I think that helps a lot because you can like help gauge like where you at, and then you also like look at the job description, like, okay, this is the level of responsibilities I will be responsible for, and then you try to like align with like your background and your skill sets. So definitely use data, right? Like when you negotiate, talk about data, like here's the report I pull, here's some of the past experiences that I have had, and this is how I would like to position myself. And sometimes just practice, it just takes a couple minutes, it doesn't have to go long. It's just like a couple minutes to like do your elevator pitch. And yeah, so data is a good way to showcase. And the second thing is, data is a typical way to do things, but then the second piece is, I think you just you have to just like do it. Like sometimes like you just like, oh, I'm just like so like happy to have this job, but then I just feel like it's still like not enough in a way that you just want to like, oh, this is what is available to you, and then you just accept it because like you just don't go above and beyond to kind of like validate. So I think for me it's more like looking into my own internal learning and see like how I evaluate where I'm at in my career. So I think it's, one thing is about, money, but then the second thing is more about like, okay, is where I'm at standing in my career. Am I lacking something? Am I like, what are some of the areas that I need to, look into in order to get myself to the next step? So kind of like, do a check and balance a little bit, like be honest with yourself, and then just like empower yourself to make the right decision. So I mean, negotiating is definitely one of the good ways to showcase that. So that's kind of my perspectives.
Well, thank you, Emily. I want to ask a follow-up question on that, because me personally, if I negotiate for a higher salary, I might be thinking that, okay, whether the interviewer would be offended or not if I ask for a higher salary. So what is your insight about that? Is this like something which they expect that with people when they interview?
Yeah, so I also had the same mentality when I negotiate in the past. And this is what I learned. They're not gonna cancel on the offering because you ask for more money. Like that's the safety net. Like they're not gonna be like, oh, I'm not gonna offer you the job anymore because you want more. Like they would never ever. I mean, I've never experienced that. I've never heard of that. So even the contracting role, like like with Alaska right now with Best Buy before I got converted to full time, I always negotiate even though it's a contracting job. And I know for a fact that they cannot just like, oh, I'm gonna pick another candidate. I mean, technically I think they can do whatever they want, but then it's just like never ever happen. If someone comes to you and offer you the job, they want you. They want to do anything they can to get you in the door. So at that position, you are already fully like committed, but it's just like, oh, the number maybe is a little bit off, so let's just help me to get there, right? Like here's where I'm standing and here's the gap, like can you help me to make this work? Like I want it as much as you want me, but how can we get there as a team? So I think that's kind of it's good to have the data, right? Kind of know your numbers in the back of your head. But then the second piece, like why this job is important to you, right? That's the second piece, like do your check and balance, like know your kind of like pros and cons and where you want to go, like 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and then be honest with yourself, right? So like you going in, you like, oh, I want this job at Alaska because I can see myself being a director someday running the e-commerce business, right? Here's all the things that I can offer right now, and here's what I can bring to the table, like 2 or 3 years down the road, right? So kind of like help them see your vision. Like they're not just hiring you for like this one little position, like, or maybe it's not little at all. Like just help them think about, there's so much more that I could offer and I'm the right resource for you, and just like go beyond the position that you're actually applying for and help them see the long-term vision. So that helps a lot too. So
Well, thank you, Emily. So the next question is that what are the best questions to ask at the end of an interview when the interviewer says, do you have any questions for me? So punctuating through it in a very thorough manner. Emily, we would love to have your insight about that. So the question was, what are the best questions to ask at the end of an interview when the interviewer says, do you have any questions for me? Does anyone have anything to say about this?
I guess I already touched a bit about this in the session, but then I just like to reiterate. For me, just from personal experience, I like to know what is the work-life balance. I want to know from the interviewer, do they enjoy working there? And if the hiring manager is actually someone who I will be reporting to, I want to know what are the top 3 challenges right now. If I were to be hired now, like a month from now, what do you want me to accomplish? 3 months from now, what do you want me to like achieve? Because I want to know in advance what kind of challenges I'm coming into. So that way, so there's no like surprises when I walk in the door and the first thing I realize like, oh my gosh, this is a lot going on. So I want to know like what are the top 3 challenges within that department, or it could be specific to the role that I'm applying for, because that will give you like a feel of like what you're walking into and what they're looking for. In terms of like resolutions, or have you come in and being able to propose ideas to overcome those challenges. And also like, a generic one would be like, what is the next step? And so those are questions that I typically will ask. And it gives you like a feel like, the work environment, it gives you a feel like, okay, this is what I'm walking into.
The things I like to do, and I think you guys are getting a feel for how strategic this whole process is. So when you're if you go from a screening to an interview, any questions that you can ask that are going to help you better understand the organization and how you can add value, and then you can translate those questions to the next interview. I don't know that we didn't talk about it a ton tonight, but in the US, we have a really annoying habit of dragging out the interview process. So you're all professionals. You have at least one degree. Many of you have more than one degree. You are likely going to end up in a screening, an in-person interview with one or two people, and coming back again one or two more times before you get an offer. So that's like a cycle of 4 to 5 interviews. And that's just by and large how we do it, especially the bigger the company, the more interviews you're going to have. So the more you can kind of have this strategy around, what are your current challenges that you're facing? Pangsha just mentioned, what would your expectations be in the first 30, 60, 90 days? What does success look like 90 days from now? That you can then, those answers, you can connect to your background and your skill sets and the value you can bring to the table. And that can also help you with kind of repeat messaging for each interview that follows until you make it to that offer stage, which is what we're mostly talking about in this panel, about then how do you negotiate. And when you get to that negotiating table, all those interview questions and answers, you're going to bring that in of like, well, you mentioned you had ABC problem, and here's how my background can help you solve that. Therefore, I believe that I fit into this place in your range, or not even in your range. This is just where my experience says I should be. And I love what you said, Emily, about like, make it a team event. Don't make it adversarial. Make it like, how can we solve this together? Pangsha, I would love, and I want to make sure we leave enough time for the group to ask questions, and hopefully you've all been thinking about your questions. Pangsha, I would love to know your perspective on the whole, the negotiating and what happens, because it came up before Emily came in, like what happens if you ask for an amount that is something a little higher, or maybe at the high end of the range. How do you just personally as an HR manager feel when somebody is negotiating and it's maybe outside of what you typically want to be doing?
So each organization is different in terms of like their budgets. And I know that with some, with some organizations, they have like a set budget. There's no room to wiggle or to even negotiate, for that higher range. And so for me, like I say that like when I have an applicant, like end that interview, when I wrap up my interview with any applicants, I like to know like what they're looking for. And I want to be direct with them. I guess it really varies by each HR professional, but for me, I want them to be direct with me. I want to know, like what is the top 3 or the top 2 deciding factor for them. And if they say, you know what, I want higher I want a salary of XYZ, then I want to know, like, what is your range? What is that one number that you're comfortable with? And then I go back with my team. We evaluate and we determine if we're willing to go that extra, step and, make that offer. And sometimes, it could be where it may not be within the budget, but that candidate is like excel in everything, and that they can bring and like added value. You'll be willing to invest in that employee. And so there are some company where it's just like a strict budget. Sorry, we can't squeeze in the additional number you're looking for. And it might boil down to, sorry, we can't. But from not the employer, but from like an individual, point of view, I say that if a company is willing to bring you on board, they will be willing to meet you in the middle. Even if they can offer you that salary right away, they're willing to listen or willing to say that, hey, what if you come in 3 months from now, we can reevaluate and we can get you there, providing you that roadmap, how to get there. And so I say that, I before I came to QIC, I went through a lot of interview, and I seen good and bad. I seen where where an potential employer give me an offer, they're like, nope, that's it, that's all we can do for you. And it really gave you like a feel like, okay, if this is how it is, like imagine like during performance review, like are you going to be able to like even voice or advocate for yourself and say, hey, you deserve XYZ. And so it's also doing that. It's also boiled down to like gut checking. Your guts tell you if they're not willing to meet or even have that conversation. It doesn't even mean that they need to like meet your provide you with that salary. Like it's the initial like effort, like wanting to have the engaged conversation, willing to listen to why you deserve this, or why you wanted the desired salary.
Thank you so much, Pongcha. So we have some good questions in the chat. Before I go to those questions, I want you guys to come up on the camera once more for a screenshot, because I checked the screenshot. They were not like, I would say they were good, but not good enough. So if I could take one more, that would be great. So please come on the
Yeah,
camera.
we want you to all look awesome on LinkedIn because,
Yes,
by the
exactly.
way, you guys, I don't know how many of you, here's my second public service announcement of the night. Not all of you have connected with me on LinkedIn, and our last week's LinkedIn post got a ton of traffic. So, I mean, like traffic being in LinkedIn is good. So if you want to get noticed, you want 1,800 of my followers, most of who are HR professionals, seeing you and hearing about how you're taking part of this program and seeing your faces, then I encourage you to come on camera, because LinkedIn is powerful. And as we learned in former sessions, it's either going to be networking or a recruiter finding you on LinkedIn is how you're going to get your professional job.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So now I'll go to the questions which some of our participants put in the chat. So Tarek asked that what would be professional way of responding for the interview questions like, why did you left your previous job? Why you apply for this position as compared to previous or current job? So does anyone have anything to say about this question?
Yeah, I can share a little bit because I get asked that question
Great.
multiple times. I think how I approach this question is to well, definitely not complaining about like, you know, your current job is not going well, blah, 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 right? Nothing negative. And then going in, you know, just be honest, right? Like, to be honest, like when I share with, when I interview with Alaska Airlines, they asked me like, oh, why are you leaving Best Buy? I'm like, well, I'm moving to Florida. You know, my style has changed. And so sometimes like it's, you know, it's just, you know, life changes, right? So just be honest with them if there's anything related to that kind of impact. But you know, and also on the other side, right, it's not always about that. Like sometimes like you're like, oh wow, I'm looking for a new opportunity. I'm looking for a new environment that I can thrive. I can, you know, try something new, something more exciting. And you know, definitely talk about like I have accomplished so much in the previous job. Like I think I get to the point that my team can do really well without, you know, my direct impact of, because we already accomplished like number one, number two milestones, right? Just really brief going in, and then I'm ready for a new exciting opportunity. And I, you know, this is really aligned with like my career aspirations, like for example, like e-commerce and omni-channel strategy. Like that's kind of how I position myself. It's just like where I'm headed in my career, why I'm making a change, right? Always tied to your passion and your career aspiration, and help them see that, you know, I have done ABC in the past. You know, I have to help the team done this, and I'm ready to, you know, move on and try something different in order to develop my skill sets. So yeah, because I don't understand that, to be honest. Sometimes I feel like people always, I talk about this with like some friends in the product management space. People kind of like make you feel a little bit uneasy when you like trying to get a new opportunity. And for me, I see that as a good thing. Like it's not like I'm running away from a problem. It's not like I'm not doing well in this environment, or maybe that's the case and it's fine too. Like, and then you're trying to like escape. It's for me, I think that, you know, you just know that you came in with the intention to deliver and you have done something and you feel good about yourself, but then you don't have to justify the fact that why you want to try a different opportunity. And I know sometimes it's hard, especially in the IT space. I feel like I got judged when I wanted to move on, and people make me feel like, oh, why are you moving on? You only been here for 1.5 years or 2 years, right? Like, because a lot of people been here for like 5 or 7 years. And so anyway, I just want to share that because I think, you know, sometimes it's like what's best for you. It's not too much about how you're being perceived. You just need to know your career goals and your career aspirations and make sure it's aligned, no matter where you're going in your career journey. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Emily. So the next question is from Zahidullah Zahid. Zahid asked, what about one-way recording interview and online interview tips? Does anyone have to say anything about this? What about one-way recording interview and online interview tips?
I think we might need a little clarification. Interview tips, I'm clear on. Zahidullah, when you say one-way recording interview, do you mean like an interview via Zoom, or do you mean should you record your interviews? Can you clarify a little bit for us?
Hello, Lisa, you hear me?
We can hear you, sir. Yep.
Yeah, so please repeat the question. I didn't.
Well,
I just-
my question is about your question. So you put in the chat,
Yeah.
you first said, what about one-way recording interview? I understand your second question. Your first question, if we could get a little clarity, what about one-way recording interview? Can you say more about what that means?
Yes, there are some application like Spark interview is online application that the HR, those people that they are going to hire other people, so they have different kind of like panels. You can make like pre-recorded questions, and then you have to answer each question. Or you can also have online face-to-face, a panel like Zoom that we have a pen. You have a like Zoom interview, but this one is different. So there are some question, and you have to answer that question. You have to do the recording by yourself, and they give you plenty time that you can answer these questions. So that's why I asked that about the tip. One of my colleague told me that he had an interview. He was like shortlisted for a job, and then he has an interview online. So he told me that I give my one-way recording interview. So then I asked him that how that one-way recording interview is. So this is an Spark interview application. So that is the elaboration that I can give, not further detail, because I'm not an expert in that area and I never give such kind of interview too.
Well, I'm really glad you asked the question because I'll give you my opinion. Well, first of all, if it's a reputable employer, I'm just going to jump in here. Thanks, Emily. If it's a reputable employer, oh, let me back up. First of all, I just do not understand how any employer would want someone to tape their interview into the void, like just tape it to no one and not have any human interaction. So that, for myself, that would have me think about like, what kind of culture is this that they just want me to record into a black box and then they're going to watch me talking to myself. I'm not a fan of it. However, for many of us, we need to get jobs in the United States. We need to build up our resumes. If it's a reputable employer and it's part of their process, there's a lot of really goofy processes out there. I guess it would be okay. I guess I would ask before I did a recording, a one-way recording, I would want to know who's going to watch it. How is it being used? What are the next steps? Inside, I would be saying, why the heck can't you just like interview me on Zoom? Oh, yeah, I don't love that process. I don't think it speaks well for the culture of the organization, but and online interview tips for that are the same as what you would do for a Zoom. You'd want to have good lighting, you'd want to have a quiet background, you'd want to make sure there's not a lot of clutter in the background, like in my background right now. Oh, what do you, and we need to, are you guys okay on time? We're almost to 8 o'clock. AJ's got some follow-up that he needs to get to, but this is really good dialogue. Let's see, we do have another question from Bakeda around negotiating and salary. I'd love to hear Emily and Pank's perspective on this one way.
Can I add something to this question?
You had your hand up too, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same question, but I would like to know at what point in the interview you can ask for more money. I mean, you know, they have a range of the description, but maybe you are looking for this job, but it's not the salary you're looking for. At what point in the interview, it's a good time. Thank
you.
I can try to answer this. So, yes, usually initial conversation with HR, you will get the idea of like how much they're offering, right? Like the range. And then the conversation stops, right? Like once you pass that first round with HR, like, okay, you agree with this range. And then you move on, you're interviewing and go through the process. And then at the end, when you receive the offer, you will find out the number. And that's when you come in feeling really confident and like wearing your hat, a green hat, and be like, okay, I'm ready to negotiate. So I think that's when you get your information ready and you're trying to do your homework, right? And if the range, if for example, I want to fully understand your question. Are you saying that like if there's a gap between, like, for example, if you say, oh, the job that I'm getting offer on is not hitting the 70K, but it's like 50K, right? So they give you the lower end. And then that's when you be like, okay, well, I've done my market research. Based on my experience, I think that I deserve at least like 65K. So like, meet them in the middle, even though they don't think that like the higher end is possible, but definitely try that first if you think that you're qualified for that. I mean, sometimes it's about you too, right? Like I said, I mentioned earlier, it's like, hey, you know what you have to bring to the table, and if you don't feel like I'm deserving 70K, don't do 70K. But if you think that you deserve 65K, yes, go in being your full confident self and be like, hey, 65K is the number that I'm shooting for. But I'm here to like work with you, to Lisa's point, right? Like how can we work as a team and to make this happen? Like I'm so excited about this job, like I'm planning for the future here, right? Like kind of help them paint the picture a little bit, and then just keep working with them. Like I remember when I get an offer from Target Corporation, they met with me for the entire week. Like the HR recruiter just like, hey, Emily, every week 4 o'clock, he's calling me and telling me, hey, where are you at? How are you feeling? How can we do better? And then if you said like, hey, I'm still working on the number, and it's fine to let them know, hey, I'm not comfortable getting 50K. I really want 65K. And just like, I'm struggling, I'm working on it. Like let them know that you're working on it, you're struggling with that. And you don't have to say yes right away. I mean, it really took me a week to receive the offer from Target. And I think that's completely okay, right? They're not going to cancel the agreement because, I mean, the offer, because you really need to take the time to be okay with it. So yeah, like I said, the empowerment piece is really, really cool. And I hope you guys will take advantage of that.
Thank you so much, Emily, for that. Now, I think we're 3 minutes past our time. So what do you say, Lisa? We have one other question in the chat. Should we go for that, or? Lisa, you're muted.
I'm typing a response to Bakeda, but yeah, we can ask that question, and then I guess I would love for Pangsha to weigh in on this whole. Have you heard of this one-way interviewing thingy? Where you're taping it to no one and then they're reviewing it?
No, that seemed a little odd in my opinion. That would not be like the most effective, best practice way of like, going about interviewing an applicant. I could see where, let's say, if you are applying for a marketing job, there might be some like pre-assessment that you have to do. You might have to do like a marketing like video or whatnot. But I say that with the whole one-way interviewing, I haven't experienced that quite that, and I'm not sure if it has to do with I'm not sure if it's a new trend, but I will question it. I will question it, and just reading his comment, the spark hire, is he referring to like 1099 contract type of like grocery delivery kind of job? If he is, then it might be where, if they're going through like a massive pool of candidates and they just want to quickly get a quick video of you and then just hire on the spot. It could be, yeah, I could see it as like, DoorDash, grocery shopping type of 1099 job where if they're just, as long as you're willing to work and you do a quick video, they might just hire you on the spot. But then again, you really made a valid point about the one-way interviewing and how it's questionable. Like, is that like a legit, company? Like, I would not want to work for a company that just want to get a video of me.
So if everybody has time, so I hope that helped, that those that answer, if everyone has time, really quick, just maybe really quick, Emily and Paincha could weigh in. Bakita's question is really good. AJ, if you could read that out, and then we will close here with our updates for what's happening next.
Sorry, Lisa, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just, I think Bakita's question is, well, all the questions have been great, but I think it's worth, if everyone can hang out for 5 more minutes. I'd love to hear what Emily and Paincha think about Bakita's question, which is regarding negotiation. How do you see asking the highest salary range from the company? Let's say the company says 50 to 70,000 is the range. And then could they come back during the offer process and say, well, we're not giving you the top end of the range. We're not giving you 60,000. We're going to offer you 65,000. And what I said to Bakita is they can do that because they can say, based on your experience and your qualifications and the job description, they could say like, well, the job description says ideally you would have X, Y, and Z and you don't. So that means we're going to put you in, the middle of the range, or the, 3/4 of the, what is the top quartile? I've lost the language, you guys. Anyway. So yeah, they can do that. That's legal for them to do that. Paincha, what are your thoughts as our resident HR expert, HR manager tonight?
Well, in that scenario, if I were the job applicant and they give me that offer, and they said, sorry, unfortunately, due to your qualification and experience, we cannot offer you like the top high range. First, my counter offer would be, well, if you can't compensate me for the high range, is there other alternative or options that you can take into consideration, like more PTO hours, or sometimes see if they're willing to pick up a part of your medical coverage, like premium. Sometimes there's all kind of crazy like options out there. Or like if they boil down, this like, sorry, unfortunately we still can't. Then I want to be transparent with them. I was like, well, this is my end goal. What can I do, or what could we do now until then to ensure that I get there, like 6 months from now, 3 months from now? What is it that that I'm missing, that if I work on this, if I improve on this, could get me to the end, the high end of the salary range. Those would be all questions that I would ask, because that would gauge you and kind of give you a feel like, okay, you know what, maybe they're unsure if you're able to do their job yet. It's just a matter of like, they want to bring you on board and see how you really perform and see if you can execute and deliver. And so I say that, those are questions that I would ask and how I would go about, a situation like that.
Thank you so much. Well, we want to be respectful of everyone's time. AJ, do you want to hit the post work like super quick in 2 minutes?
Yes, I will go through it super quick. So the post work would be, because we assume that your resumes most of you, your resumes would be ready. If it's not, it should be ready by 3/21 because we have the employer presentation session on that day. So if you have your resumes ready, please find 2 people who know you well and ask them review your resume. And the second post-work is please ensure your resume, LinkedIn profile, and one-page networking profile are ready to be shared. So this is the post-work. And then we have the interview negotiating offers learning assessment QR code. You can scan it right now in here. It will take you to the assessment. It's a short assessment, which would not take more than 2 to 3 minutes. So you can scan it right now. If you don't, no problem. I'll send the assessments link tomorrow in the post program email. And then next week we have employer presentations. So as you can see, you should review each employer partner's website. You should look through the job openings on the website and start thinking about which openings might be a good match for you. And prepare questions to ask the company representatives. Think of this as a practice networking call or interview. So what do you want to know about their company and jobs? And okay, so Lisa, I think we're done with the slides. So if you have any final
you
words.
guys, for sure, the Toro company is going to be here next week presenting. They consistently have around 200 job openings at any time. They have 16 companies under them. They have everything from IT to law, to marketing, to finance, to HR. So please get on their website. And those are professional jobs. Pengcha QSC is welcome to come and present. We've got a lot of professionals who have families, family members who are looking for more entry-level manufacturing jobs. So if that's something that's of interest to you and Isabel, you are welcome. The other organization who's going to be presenting has everything from entry-level manufacturing to professional jobs. It's a 100-year-old printing company, and that's called Japs Olson. They are on the bus line in St. Louis Park, right off of 169. So please, and AJ, we'll make sure when you and I meet in the morning, let's make sure we get a little more company information, but you guys look at their job openings. They're good companies, and they might not be where you want to head, but you might know friends and families where that's something that they would be interested in. So be ready. This is all a build, right? We talked about that from the beginning. This is a build to getting ready to network and interview with really great companies. So thanks for hanging out, Emily. Pengcha, thanks for hanging out 15 minutes late. We appreciate your partnership, and everybody have a great night.
Thank you. You guys have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Laura.